This is now part 3, where we look at the whole concept. Yes, anti-vaxxers can be converted. In part 3, we will now examine some of the techniques used. So how do you talk to those who are hesitant about the COVID-19 vaccine? How do you approach them? What are the general principles that we know that work? Yes, vaccine resistance is largely a result of cognitive biases or shortcuts that people use to try to understand things, resulting many times in errors of judgment. Cognitive biases are very powerful. It undermines how the general public makes sense of scientific data. Oftentimes, these present potential barriers to optimal decision-making. The interesting thing is that no human population is immune to this. These biases are intensified by the current climate with so much uncertainty, so much public distrust. As we said, the biases are the result of shortcuts that the brain is a terrible process for actually processing complex information, and ones that have a lot of emotional load, such as the kind of complex issues related to vaccines. Instead, what the brain does, it creates shortcuts in how you perceive information. And these things create problems for many people. Now, there are several biases behind any vaccination decision that must be addressed. And these biases are extremely common. Summarizing, we talked about them in detail in section 2, but just to remind you, there are 11 biases that we've identified so far. Conspiratorial, distorted risk perception bias, collective good over personal choice bias. The converse, personal choice over collective good bias. Number 5, confirmation bias. 6, availability bias. 7, the illusion of causality bias. 8, vaccine distrust bias. 9, the fear of needle bias. 10, profiling bias. And 11, omission bias. Again, those are dealt with in detail in part 2. So you may wish to go back and review them so you understand how these biases work. Now, biases as opposed to evidence. One thing we have learned is that you can't change an anti-vax person's attitude or behavior by providing scientific evidence. Evidence does not work in the face of biases. The problem is not that these people lack the evidence, or even they're uneducated, or they don't understand the evidence. The more you continue to repeat the risk of not being vaccinated, the greater the boomerang effect, and could actually increase the vaccine resistance. So one has to learn processes, methods, and techniques which have been tried and proven that actually work. Now, these can be summarized in 18 categories. We don't expect for you to learn them all, memorize them all, but there are 18 categories. And we're going to give a brief description of what these are. This may even tempt you to do some more research. And one thing we understand is that if you are already trained in the area of behavior management, psychology, psychotherapy, counseling, psychiatry, you may be easier to move into these areas. But I would suggest that you do some reading, but definitely engage someone who has training in this area. We're talking about saving our lives. So what are these areas? Let's start with number 1, which for me is the single most important. Number one is called motivational interviewing techniques. Yes, there is such a thing. This is the method used when individual concerns are being presented, but you do so in a non-judgmental way to isolate exact concerns. This technique begins with gauging where the person is. Where are they with respect to their decision-making process? And what are their specific concerns? So you can isolate them and work with them. If someone has few concerns, they might be addressed on the spot and transformation takes place immediately. But some who have hesitance might respond better when you share them the information and then give them time to go away and reflect on any decision that they need to make. This technique is commonly used to get persons to accept treatment for things like alcohol abuse and other therapeutic intervention. The person needs to admit that there's a problem and then find a way forward in terms of getting on with it. This counseling method enhances the patient's motivation to change by means of 4 guided principles. There's an acronym for this. RULE, R-U-L-E. So in motivational interviewing, the R stands for resist. Resist telling them what to do. Avoid telling them, directing them, or even convincing your friends or your colleagues or whoever about the right path that they need to pursue. Resist. You understand their motives. That's why, again, we talked about in stage 2, look at the various biases. What are the biases in place? Understand what's motivating them. Seeks to understand their values, their needs, their abilities, their motivation, and the potential barriers to change in behavior. Resist, but then understand. L stands for listen. How do you listen? Listen with empathy. Seek to understand their values, their needs, their motivation, and their barriers to change. And E, you empower them. Work with them to set achievable goals, to identify techniques to overcome the barriers. Help them to help themselves. R-U-L-E. It works. In the area of motivational interview methods, we also look at ORS. O, open questions. Open them. Affirmation. Provide them with affirmation. Show empathy in all the situations. R, reflective listening. Mirror what the person is saying to you. Rephrase what they're saying in your own words. And S, summarize. Put it all together. The process is one that takes you through step by step, helping to get them to the point that they will actually be in a mood to transform. To sum it up, you can talk in 3 areas. First, you ask permission. May we talk about this? Use of open-ended questions, but then you can frame it with some close-ended questions that the persons can easily give you a yes or a no answer to. The conversation rolls that way. And then once you've done that, you can now provide them with the information that fills the blanks, give them the feedback, advise them of how the pieces will work in terms of the areas that they have opened up. But then as you proceed, you listen. You appreciate what they're trying to share with you. You encourage them. You reflect with them. And again, you summarize, pull it all together. So this is the anchor. This is the main perspective by which we bring about the changes. Method 2, or should I say, position 2, shoot for the middle. Pick your battles carefully. Yeah? There's some people who are dead set against receiving any vaccine under any circumstance and never want to change their mind. There's no point wasting your time. It's best that you work with, there's always a larger group of the wait and see. There are plenty of persons in the middle. They just want more information. They want to be convinced. They want you to help them remove the barriers that they have. So that's the best group to work with. 3, have a conversation, not a lecture. Don't assume that you know everything and they know nothing. Make sure you're listening. This is a conversation, it goes 2 ways. Try to address their concern, not what you assume is their concern. The data shows us that about 70% of vaccine hesitant people are concerned about side effects. Huh? So that's one big group. So be prepared to listen, have answers to the questions, let them have a safe place where they can have the conversation about things that they're probably even afraid to share with other people. Wagging your finger at them and telling them, no, 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 you can't do that. That's not good. It's a conversation. 4, speak the language of the people. Whatever language they're comfortable with, make sure the person who is trying to provide this transformation uses that same language, and preferably the person's first language, or even their dialect. Speak to them in a manner that they're used to and comfortable with. Reduce the distance between yourself and them. 5, understand the doubts that they have. Yes, there are people talking about microchips and altering DNA and impairing fertility and making them magnetic. Listen to all of these things, not to ridicule, but to understand the root cause of the doubt and what could have triggered them. Understand the doubts. 6, don't get bogged down. Keep it as simple as possible. If people think they might get COVID from the vaccine because they don't understand, remind them it's not a live vaccine. It is absolutely impossible. So that the simple answers are usually the best answers. 7, understand that facts won't necessarily help. Facts by themselves rarely do anything, and sometimes they actually aggravate the situation. Science alone is not going to change the mind of those with strong beliefs. What might work, at least for some, is appealing to the altruistic side. When you understand, back in part 2, we talked about the kind of bias, those who are more important in looking for what's good for everybody, what's good for the society, what's the best thing for my workplace, what's the best thing for my customers, that will help. 8, when you share science with them, simplify science, simplify it. Very few things in science are 100%. We make the best decision based on the evidence. And yes, science can change because as evidence accumulates, one side or the other. Explain herd immunity. Use a diagram if necessary to show them what happens with the transfer rate as the numbers increase. Simple diagrams actually help to simplify the process. 9, talk about safety. Remind people that vaccines have been tested on thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of people, diverse age, ethnicity, racial group, and millions of people have safely taken them. So do not shy away from the safety issue. Share it. 10, crowdsource. What crowdsource will work? The polls actually show that people who are hesitating, the hesitation is diminished as they see more people that they know get vaccinated. They don't want to be the first in line, but they want other people that they know to go first. So People they know, can you share that with them? People that they trust, can you share that with them? The crowd that they follow. 11, don't use blame. Making people feel guilty, making people feel stupid about asking questions, about doing things, about believing things, doesn't hurt. That word again, empathy. Show empathy. It is reasonable for people to have concern. Huh? Take a deep breath, listen, hear them out. It's been a rough year for most people. Many people are fatigued. They just want to move on with their life, but not sure how to. 12, wherever possible, use humor. Dry lectures are boring and don't work. If you can find something humorous to lighten the situation, it makes it easier for people to open up and listen and ultimately change. 13, understand the basis of the mistrust. Understand the history of deception and abuse in terms of medical procedure over the years. But remind them now, everyone is receiving the same treatment, the same vaccines. A lot of people are angry and frustrated because of the historical issues. Don't run away from them. Acknowledge that, yes, these things happened, but things are different now and there are checks and balances in place. 4, don't be afraid to talk about religion. Some people have some religious views because in some of the vaccine development, fetal cells were used in the early phases, and this creates some moral objection for some individuals. This is the issue in the J&J vaccine, which uses cell lines that originate from the fetal cells during the research and the production phase. But interestingly, the Pope has made a pronouncement. I believe that ethically everyone should take the vaccine. And on January 13, 2021, the Pope received his first Pfizer vaccine. So from a religious standpoint, even where that issue of fetal cells were used in the developmental phase, the Pope was able to understand and to share with fellow religious personnel that his position is that the vaccine is useful for humanity. Don't be afraid to talk religion. 15, focus on the future. If all else failed, the best strategy may be to focus on what the herd immunity could offer, helping us back to a normality that we so long. People don't want to be in lockdown week after week, month after month, sometimes year. People don't want to stay in this mess forever. People want to look forward to things like Thanksgiving celebration and Christmas celebration, going to graduation for their children in person, going to their sons and daughters' wedding. People want to get their life back and emphasize the future that we're trying to recreate. 16, nothing wrong with getting personal. Nothing like sharing your own personal experience, your own personal story, how you came to your decision. What were you thinking about? What were your uncertainty? What is it that convinced you? Share your own personal story. 17, sometimes the hesitance is just the need for help. So when you listen, you realize, oh, this person really just needs transportation. Or this person just needs child care. Who will keep the children while they go to get their vaccination? Sometimes it is simple as that, but it is covered up with something else. Offer help. And finally, 18, be patient. It may take several conversations before someone is ready to be vaccinated. You may have to keep answering the same questions over and over and over again, but be patient. Huh? When seeds of change are planted, we never know the gestation period. So these are the 18 steps that we work through, and we will be happy to work with your family, your company, your community, your organization, because this is about saving our lives. I want to also encourage you to take a look at a number of videos that we have produced to help people to understand the issues around the coronavirus. I call them my coronavirus lessons. Lesson 1, the laws of the universe. Lesson 2, leadership. Lesson 3, breath. For months we have had to cover, mask. So breathing has been impacted in some very interesting ways. Lesson 4, touch. The world of social distance has created some strange experiences that we have to get used to. Lesson 5, the new world of work. Lesson 6, relationships. Lesson 7, the other pandemic, which we are now beginning to face, mental health. And lesson 8, the impact on education. So we strongly encourage you to take a look at these to broaden your understanding. And then give us a call. You can reach us at info@aboveorbeyondjm.com. Telephone numbers 876-948-5627 or 954-701-5208. Get in touch with us. We can help. It's about saving lives, saving our own lives. Yes, anti-vaxxers can be converted.